board, thank you for being here today at our special board of directors meeting. Since this is our first meeting of the day, I'll ask the board corporate secretary, Jennifer Ellison, to please call the roll. I'd also like to note that we're joined by a new principal board member from Maryland, who will officially be sworn in, or who was officially sworn in earlier this week, and will be publicly sworn in.
Is something wrong?
Thank you, Chair Spencer. Vice Chair Babers. Present. Vice Chair Drummer. Present. Klein. Mr. Letourneau. Present. Dr. Lowe. Present. Mr. McAndrew.
Yes, and bad.
And Mark Proctor. Morning. Mr. Chair, you have one.
Thank you. Request approval for 2 additional agenda items to swear in our new board member, Joe McAndrew, and to approve his objections to the agenda item. Hearing none, we are approved. Joe, thank you for being here today. As your appointment, his areas of focus include, Joe currently is the Assistant Secretary of Transportation at the Maryland Department of Transportation. His areas of focus include policy, planning, and enterprise services. And now, of course, Metro. Prior to his MDOT appointment, Joe was the Vice President of Government Infrastructure for Greater Washington Partnership, a nonprofit focused on economic growth and inclusive prosperity. We look forward to his leadership and his Joe, please join me here.
Oh no, they want to be special.
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Maryland, for which I was appointed as a principal director of the board of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit, of the board of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board, colleagues. Excited to be excited to work with the team here and the team in Maryland to go ahead and continue to make progress. Thanks.
With Joe swearing in, I'd like to move approval to the revisions to the board committee assignments. Mr. McAndrew to the Finance and Capital Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Letourneau. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Ellison, please call the roll or administer the vote.
Chair Svedberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers.
Aye.
Vice Chair Drummer.
Aye.
Ms. Klein. Mr. Letourneau.
Aye.
Dr. Lowe.
Aye.
Mr. McAndrew.
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now recess for just a few seconds, and the Finance and Capital Committee will convene, and we'll finish the special board meeting following the Safety and Operations Committee.
All right, good morning. Thank you for joining us. April 14th meeting of the Finance and Capital Committee. I'll ask our Chief Safety Officer, Teresa Impastato, to start us out with a safety contact.
If we are instructed to exit the building, there's an AED located at the entry desk, and in the event of an emergency, I'll retrieve the AED and render aid while the security team coordinates the response. Lastly, restrooms are located in the vestibule area adjacent to this conference room. Ensuring the safety of customers across all modes of transit, especially our youngest customers, is a core value at Metro. When using the Metro system with children, be sure to look, listen, and be alert at all times. Stay together, but have a plan in case you become separated. Show your child how to contact a station manager or other Metro employee if they are lost or need help. While waiting for a bus or train, keep children with you and away from the curb or platform edge. Strollers are welcome on Metro Bus. If you are traveling with a stroller, you may keep it open in the priority seating area so long as you do not block the aisle or door. Ensure that your child is strapped in the stroller on and hold the stroller at all times. Never use a stroller on an escalator. Use the elevator instead. For more information on safely traveling with children or riding the system in general, visit WMATA.com. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Impastato. We'll move to the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of our March 23rd meeting before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. So we have 3 items on the committee's agenda today, one of which is a very significant one, which is the adoption of the FY 2024 budget, the CIP. As we gather and begin the process, final approval of the budget here, I'd just like to thank all of the stakeholders who have provided input on the budget. We received over 4,000 comments on the budget. This is a process that began in September. It was a collaborative process between management and the board of directors. We have a lot of partners that help make Metro run, including our federal partners, our congressional delegation, very helpful in obtaining sources of funding for us, particularly in the capital budget. The FY24 budget continues to rely on significant federal funding to maintain service as we continue to emerge from the pandemic. I'd like to thank the staff, the budget staff. They've worked very, very hard on this. I know I've myself had some night and weekend calls with Mr. Webster and others about different budget items, so I know how much work goes into this. So on behalf of all of us on the board, we thank you for all that work. And this is a good budget which has several innovative options and service improvements that I think our customers are going to be excited about. And I'd like to thank all of you on the board for your collaborative approach over the last 7 months. We've discussed, debated, looked at a lot of different issues, a lot of ways to help generate revenue, help drive ridership, and I think it's been a very, very good process. In addition to the budget adoption, we have 2 other items on the agenda. The first is the execution of a reimbursable project agreement with the District of Columbia for an automated bus lane and bus stop zone enforcement project that will result in shorter travel times and more reliable service on Metrobus. And the committee will be asked to authorize the issuance of 7 joint development solicitations and approval to hold 6 compact public hearings as part of the implementation of our strategic plan for joint development released in 2022. So up first is the budget. I'll turn the floor over to the team.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Yetunde Olumide, Chief Financial Officer and Executive Vice President. This morning, Mr. Webster, Ms. Benson, and I will review and recommend the adoption of the FY24 operating and capital budgets and the 6-year CIP. We'll also recommend the approval of the Public Participation Staff Report and Title VI analysis. Historically, passenger revenue funded about 36% of the operating budget, of which 80% was Metro Rail revenue. Ridership and revenue are improving, but overall remain below pre-COVID levels, with federal relief funding playing a vital role in balancing our FY24 operating budget. Operating costs are directly linked to service levels, and 70% of total expenses are for personnel to operate and maintain bus, rail, and paratransit services. The recommended FY24 to 26 CIP planned investment levels totals about $14 billion, and the FY24 capital budget investment is about $2.4 billion. Progress has been made in addressing the immediate capital needs, and the 6-year CIP will continue to reduce the backlog of unmet capital projects. After the budget was proposed in December, the board approved the docket for public comment in January with a comprehensive public input process that included public hearings held in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia in March. In summary, the FY24 budget includes many initiatives critical to our customers and the region: safety enhancements promoting the state of good repair and enabling the modernization and electrification of the vehicle fleet, the Fare Modernization Program, Supply Chain Modernization, Zero Emission Bus Program, Northern Bus Garage, and Bladensburg Bus Garage, to name a few. An improved transit network with more frequency within the central portion of the system to serve fast-growing areas with high ridership potential, provide efficient and predictable transfers, and increase job accessibility. A simpler Metro Rail fare structure and a new low-income fare program that makes transit more affordable for customers. Customer service and communications improvements, including funding for a new Metro Integrated Communications Center, and sustainability projects such as solar panels, garage rooftops, and regenerative power capture for rail cars. Based on customer, stakeholder, and board input, the recommended FY24 budget makes the following updates from the original December proposal. Maintain $6 maximum fare instead of increasing to $6.50. Reduce the maximum fare on Metro Access from $6.50 to $4. Increase Metrobus service by adding the Route 11Y, and increase late night green and yellow line service to every 7.5 minutes from 10 minutes. Metro's $4.8 billion operating and capital budget is funded through a variety of sources, including system-generated revenues, state and local support, as well as federal funding sources. State and local funding of about $1.3 billion supports the operating budget. Additional funding of $561 million from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, offsets revenue losses and funds additional expenses incurred as ridership continues to rebound. System-generated revenues derived from Metro Rail, Metrobus, Metro Access support the operating budget for a total of about $507 million. For capital investments, about $800 million from proceeds from debt issuance will fund Metro's continued investment of high-priority asset replacement, safety, and a state of good repair. $500 million of state-provided dedicated funding allows Metro to both previous debt issuances and directly fund high-priority state of good repair projects. Federal grant funding for Metro's PRIA grant was reauthorized for 10 years under IIJA, and FY24's appropriation is expected to be about $143 million. Metro's $4.8 billion budget funds our commitment to providing safe, reliable, and affordable service. The $2.4 billion operating budget focuses on delivering Metro Rail, Metrobus, and Metro Access services. Specifically, the operating budget funds the operations and maintenance of Metro's transit services with about $743 million for bus, $1.4 billion for rail, and over $200 million for Metro Access. The budget includes additional funding for Metro Police engagement to enhance security and increase our customer-focused initiatives. With the capital budget of $2.4 billion, Metro continues to focus on safety in Metro Rail's train control systems, tunnel leak mitigation, and station rehabilitation. It's budgeted about $527 million to be invested in bus and bus facilities and paratransit. The bus network redesign will allow Metro to better align bus service to current potential customer needs, providing more frequent, competitive service, and simplifying the bus network. Sustainability continues to be our focus as well. This includes the ongoing procurement of zero-emission buses, coordination with local partners and utilities to put in place the infrastructure needed to support electric buses. Other investments include IT, software and hardware, some cybersecurity improvements, as well as replacement of the data center. To recap, Metro's $2.3 billion operating budget funds the operations of bus, rail, and access. On Metrobus, there will be all-day frequent service improvements to 4 additional lines and the launching of the Better Bus Network redesign. On Metro Rail, service would improve with trains arriving every 3 to 6 minutes at stations in the core and trains arriving 8 to 12 minutes system-wide, benefiting customers across the entire network. Green and Yellow Line trains would arrive every 6 minutes all day, with all Yellow Line trains turning, every 6 minutes all day. The proposed rail fare structure ranges from $2 to $6 for weekdays and maintains the $2 late night weekend fares. The proposed low-income fare program would provide customers enrolled in the SNAP program a 50% discount on trips, similar to the seniors and disabled reduced fares. This table shows a comparison of the FY23 budget to the recommended FY. Total revenue is expected to grow by about 32.5%, and expenses grow at about 3%. This budget is discussed, is customer focused and delivers service and fare enhancements to our customers. The $2.4 billion CIP funds the aforementioned investment categories, including the first Metro Integrated Communication Center, a consolidated call center, and new passenger information display networks to enhance customer experience. I won't go through each of these categories this time, but the expected federal funding will be approximately $615 million. Local funding of nearly $943 million includes funds provided by Metro's jurisdictional partners as well. Proceeds from about $798 million from debt issuance will be used to balance the budget and ensure Metro's CIP program is focused on improving the aforementioned investment categories. The chart on the right shows the capital investments of about $2.4 billion and their uses. In summary, the table shows the recommended capital budget of about $2.4 billion. Investments in the Northern and Bladensburg to enable them to run electric vehicles, replacement of bus divisions at Northern and Bladensburg, and land acquisition for Western as well. Metro's 6-year CIP continues to invest in the system to modernize and provide safe, efficient, and reliable service for customers, employees, and the region, addressing the backlog of overdue state of good repair needs and sustain safety and reliability through recurring maintenance, rehabilitation, and replacement programs. Now, Ms. Benson will present the results of the public participation.
Good morning. One of the most important parts of the budget is the public participation. Our priorities remain to inform the public of the FY24 budget proposals, make sure that they understand those concepts, collect feedback so that we can inform the board and that we can inform our leadership. We want to make sure that we're demonstrating to our customers and our partners that we're listening to their concerns. We also want to comply with the public participation plan best practices and meet requirements for the Federal Transit Administration, the compact public hearings, and the Title VI equity analysis, which you'll hear more from Tom later. Throughout the comment period, we used a wide variety of tactics, and we're excited that we received more than 1,000 comments, and that's more than last year's public engagement, representing a 28% increase year over year. I want to commend the team for their efforts. They do a lot of work to be creative around how we meet customers where they are and ensure that they're able to provide comments and feedback. To that end, the individuals that you see out in the system, whether it's rail, whether it's bus, and at bus stops with the yellow aprons. They had more than 4,200 hours of street team time so that they could talk to customers specifically about the budget initiatives. They handed out more than 100,000 brochures and made sure that individuals, again, were clued into the concepts and initiatives that were being proposed. They visited 18 SNAP locations to reach low-income community members, and there were more than 12% of interactions with Hispanic individuals. They reached out to 2,700 community-based organizations, and they also talked to 60 young people who don't necessarily get an opportunity to vote, but should certainly understand as they're growing how they can contribute in the future as important members of our civic society. We are really excited again that we continue to improve our engagement and outreach year over year. Again, we're using all of our tactics, so that's a combination of our own channels, channels like Nextdoor, which is important to reach neighborhoods and communities. We've had individuals visit our website 17,000 times to look at budget information, which continues to increase their engagement with us, which contributed to the collective feedback that we received. More than half our comments were received on bus and rail service, and 1 in 5 comments on safety, crime, and fare evasion. We also received quite a few comments on the electrification of our Metro buses, and there was broad support for our low-income fare program. We had 73% approved of eliminating the off-peak peak pricing. 2/3 low-income respondents opposed increasing the max fare to $6.50, and over half approved turning back yellow line trains at Mount Vernon Square to provide more service on the yellow and green lines. I actually read through the comments, and there were quite a few for the 11Y line. So again, we saw a number of comments around service on both rail and bus. I also want to point out that 35% expressed that fare proposal would increase their likelihood of choosing Metro, and 60% expressed more frequent service would increase their likelihood of choosing Metro. So again, there was a lot that went into the public outreach and feedback, and I want to commend the team for all of their hard work to get us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine Utundu. As you just heard, the FY24 budget includes service and fare changes that will benefit Metro's customers, and especially Metro's low-income and minority customers. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act requires that Metro prepare an equity analysis for permanent major service changes and all changes in fares or access to fare media. The analysis determines whether the proposed changes will have a disparate impact on the basis of race, color, or national origin, or a disproportionate burden on low-income riders. So that, as you heard this morning, and you know well, the proposed budget includes a number of major rail service changes, major bus service changes, and fare changes, including fare simplification in the low-income fare program, which necessitate this equity analysis process consistent with the Title VI circular from FTA. This slide shows the process that staff and management go through to conduct that service equity analysis for Title VI. In summary, and as anticipated, the updated proposed service and fare changes do not result in a disparate impact to minority customers and do not result in a disproportionate burden to low-income customers. Much more detailed analysis is included in the attachments to the budget resolution.
We have now completed the budget workshops and are currently in the stage of budget adoption. Once the budget is adopted by the board, staff will proceed with submission of federal grant applications and complete budget implementation by the beginning of the fiscal year on July 1. In conclusion, staff recommends board acceptance of the public hearing staff report and approval of the Title VI analysis and the FY24 budget and 6-year CIP. Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will open it up for board questions or comments on the presentation. Director Klein.
Thank you. And thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Again, it's like seeing an old friend, and happy to bring it to its conclusion. As the chairman said, there are so many really innovative initiatives in here. I think there's a lot to be excited about. I did want to reiterate that one reason we're able to avoid having a much more negative outlook for this year is the use of some federal funding to support the budget. This is not a long-term solution, so we're going to have to get back to that, and I understand that we won't be including that in the baseline for next year. Start fresh and figure out what to do about next year's challenges starting soon, I'm sure. I did have one question regarding the low-income fare program. Now that we're on the verge of adopting this budget that includes the low-income fare program, it's going to be important for our customers to understand how to, I assume they will have to actually sign up. It's not going to be an automatic thing. Do you have, I know we're just on the phase of adopting it today, but do you have an estimate or a plan for how you're going to be communicating that to customers and when they can start signing up?
Yes. So we are hard at work at finishing the design of the program, and you're correct. There will be a sign-up process. In terms of schedule, we plan to come back to the board next month with a broader update on program design, and that will begin some of our outreach to customers and potential customers for the low-income fare program.
Great. Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you very much. Other questions, comments? Go to the other end. Dr. Lowe.
Yeah, my question is about slide 12. In addition to Director Klein's note that federal relief is 24% of the FY24 budget, I note on slide 12 that we're projecting 32.5% revenue growth in FY24. And that what's implied by that 32.5% is that we will collect, looks like we're talking about like roughly 125 million more in fare revenue this year. What happens if we don't hit that projection?
Thank you for your question, Dr. Liu. So with federal relief that we have right now for ARPA, any variances we do have will fall to the bottom line. And so we end up using a little less or a little more depending on variances that are achieved on the revenue side or on expenses.
Is there 124 million in federal relief pocket change still under the couch cushions?
No, ma'am.
So if we don't hit this revenue projection, we'll be operating at a deficit?
That is correct. Given the current projections, that is correct.
Okay, let's get to it.
You may want to put some time. Yeah.
I was going to say, would the general manager like to?
I would just say, this is like every budget that everyone will go through every year, whether it's a municipality, a business, or an organization like that. So, you know, a budget is a forecast. That's why we will do monthly and quarterly, and that's when we come back to the board and give status checks. Our job as management, assuming the board passed the budget day, is to manage our expenses. We know we can't have a deficit, and so if we have a trend analysis that shows, say, ridership doesn't hit certain levels, and i.e. therefore fare revenue, then we are going to have to manage our costs, and then our business cost is generally service. We feel pretty good where we are right now, especially where things are going. But that is what we have to do every year, whether COVID existed, whether we had federal relief money or not. Yeah, and so a good conversation publicly, which is we are required to balance our budget, and the management team's job is on a daily basis managing costs.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to thank staff for walking us through this very, sort of difficult season this year, and we had a lot of, really big questions to start, to answer, but to start thinking about in the context of this budget. So thanks to Randy and everyone out there who participated. And as Ms. Klein said, I think personally there's a lot in this budget to like. The fare simplification, the enhancement of the low-fare income program, the initiative that Ms. Klein and Ms. Martin Proctor with the Metro Access, the capital budget, maintaining that capital budget so those programs are on track for a safe, reliable system, consolidation of the comms area, which I think is really going to be important. So there is a lot here, codifying the late night and weekend fares, as we look to bring back riders, and as our riders and our customers start looking at the system very differently as well. They're using it differently. So these are all, I think, really important things to have as a base, moving forward. It goes without saying, as the general manager said, and we all know, we are very fortunate to have a federal delegation that supports us the way we do. And their support has really helped to get us to this point. But, as we know, starting this afternoon or tomorrow morning, 25
last week.
Last month. 25 is there, and a lot of questions, and we'll obviously have to turn to them for more help and support. And the robust public participation, I think, really has been great, particularly as we think about the new Metro and what it's going to be in the future. So that was really encouraging to see people participating and letting their views be heard. So thank you for all that, and I think this is really a solid budget.
Okay, any further comments? Second round?
Sorry, just one thing to add to what the chairman just said, which is I think in addition to how great this budget is, and I do think it's a very, very smart budget, I think the service plan that is attached to this is the smartest service plan that I've ever seen WMATA put together. But I don't want to speak about it in hindsight, terms like that. What impresses me most about the service plan is how forward-looking it is and how responsive it is to future transit realities. And I really, really appreciate the staff in what they've pulled together for this, because I think that it really puts WMATA in a situation where we are leading amongst transit in the United States, and does reaffirm that when WMATA wants to look for peers and for ideas for even what's next, that it will be globally that we look, because WMATA will already be so much more strongly positioned relative to other U.S. transit agencies in adapting to what the future of transit is going to be.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move that the Finance Committee approve the public hearing staff report, Title VI analysis, and to adopt the FY 2024 budget and FY 2024 to 2029 CIP. Is there a second? I'll give that one to the chairman. Actually, are you a member of the?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, does it matter?
It's a committee of the whole.
Yeah, it's committee of the whole, so it doesn't matter. Okay. Give that one to the chairman then. We do have one amendment that has been brought forward, which I'm going to turn to Mr. Drummer for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I offer an amendment, I'd like Mr. Webster, if he would provide some context for us. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So Metro has an existing senior Smart Trip card that provides a 50% discount off of Metro Rail, Metro Bus, and regional bus providers. Currently, customers age 65 and older can enroll and receive a card at Metro's Accessibility Center, sales office. Sales offices, commuter stores, and some senior centers and libraries in the region. Customers currently must purchase the Senior Smart Trip card for $2. There are approximately 130,000 Senior Smart Trip cards last year active in the program. There is some sense that the $2 charge for that Smart Trip card presents a barrier to access to the program, both in terms of customers accessing the program directly, as well as our opportunities to partner with other agencies and partners in the jurisdictions to offer that program more broadly.
Thank you, Mr. Webster, and I really appreciate the staff for their transparency and detail in sharing that information with us. At this point, I move to amend resolution adoption of fiscal year 2024 operating and capital budgets, fare and service changes, and fiscal year 2024 to 2029 capital improvements program, and approval of Title VI equity analysis and public participation report as follows. Add a new resolved clause between the 8th and 9th resolved clauses to read as follows. Resolve that the Board of Directors, that after the Board of Directors' approval of an acceptable Title VI equity analysis, the $2 charge for new senior Smart Trip cards be waived for the cards issued after the effective date of the Board of Directors' approval of the Title VI equity analysis.
Is there one more clause that you need to add in there just to be it further, or do we not need that? It's fine, okay. Motion's made, I will second. Discussion on the amendment. Anything further from you?
Nothing further from me.
Okay, I'll just add that this is good. In a way, this is almost a technical correction, where I think it's our intent to provide a discount for our senior product, similar to what we're doing for some of the other groups. But we discovered that because we're charging for the Smart Trip cards themselves, we need to waive that cost in order to be able to, and we have to do that by board policy because it's part of the tariff. So thank you to Mr. Drummer for bringing this forward. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Ms. Babers.
I just wanted to applaud Director Drummer for bringing this amendment to the table. And I also want to thank WMATA staff, the board. This was a rough one, this budget. Next year is going to be even rougher. But we're going to take this one. We're going to claim this one. So thank you so very much.
Any other discussion on the amendments? Okay, so the first vote that's coming is going to be simply on the amendments, and I'll ask the board corporate secretary to call the roll on the amendment.
Thank you. Chair Letourneau?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. McAndrew?
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg?
Aye.
Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the amendment passes.
Thank you. All right, so is there any further discussion on the budget itself? If not, I'll ask the corporate secretary to call the roll on the main motion.
Chair Letourneau?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Ms. Klein? Mr. McAndrew?
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg? Aye. Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll be taking this back up, hopefully shortly in our morning here when we have the special board meeting for final adoption. The next item on the agenda for the Finance Committee is the Clear Lanes reimbursable project. I believe I'm turning this over to Mr. Webster. And Ms. Chowdhury is coming up as well.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This morning we'll be providing a overview of the Clear Lanes program. I'm waiting for the slides to update here just briefly. And as bus lanes become more common throughout the region, Metro is launching an automated camera enforcement program. Right now in coordination and partnership with the District of Columbia, this morning we are requesting authorization from the board to enter into a reimbursable project agreement with the District of Columbia for Clear Lanes. Metro's role will be to collect and share violation data of bus lanes and bus stops in DC. There are three primary outcomes that we're focused on: improving reliability and travel time for our bus customers, reducing stress and improving operating conditions for our bus operators, and making streets safer overall for road users. There are some very clear alignments in this program with our strategic plan, including improving service for our customers and regional partnerships. I'm going to turn it over to Raka Chowdhury, who is our Director of Bus Priority, and she and her team have been leading this effort.
Thank you. Good morning. The Priority Program at Metro is working on a number of initiatives to improve bus speed and reliability. This graph shows how various factors slow our buses down on our streets every day. And changing patterns and new curbside users add congestion to our streets, and they are our primary delaying factor. Buses also slow down at signals and signalized intersections and bus stops, proliferation of bus stops across the region. We have tools to address all of these, but the most impactful of them are dedicated bus lanes. This is where the Clear Lanes program comes in. Bus lanes are only effective when they are clear and available for use, and travel times for customers are then shorter, service is more reliable, and we have more satisfied customers. Traffic congestion and reduced speeds impact Metro bus ridership. The average speed of buses in DC is 9.8 miles per hour. That's an average, so as averages go, there are some segments where we have bus speeds as low as 3 miles per hour, and it's been getting worse every year. Our jurisdictional partners are continuing to build bus lanes to speed buses up, but unauthorized users in bus lanes slow them down. 57% of our customers live in zero-car households and are more likely to be low income and persons of color than elsewhere in our region. Enforcing bus lane speeds our buses up and saves time for these bus riders. It improves access to jobs and opportunities. It helps a little towards leveling the playing field for people in our community who need it most. Clear Lanes is an important step towards equity in our region. Clear Lanes will make Metro buses operate more efficiently by reducing trip times and increasing schedule adherence and reliability. It will also reduce operator stress and the risk that they inadvertently take trying to get their buses to their final destination on time. Most importantly, it will improve our customer experience as well as safety and accessibility at bus stops. The technology for Clear Lanes is a standalone one. The separation is necessary and intentional for evidence processing and chain of custody. It is also fully automated, so there's no need for operator involvement, no opportunity for bias or the perception of bias. The system includes 2 internally mounted cameras. There's a context camera and an automated license plate reader. It has its own GPS antenna and an on-bus computer that brings this all together. Clear Lanes is a partnership between Metro and the District of Columbia. And I'd like to take a moment. We have our partners working with us. They are present in the audience. So thank you, Charles. Charles Turner is here from DC. Metro's role is to procure the vendor to install camera technology on our buses, and these cameras will capture evidence packages for violations, and we'll transmit them to DC. Once the program is launched to issue tickets, Metro will have no access to videos or images at all. This will all be with DC. Metro will also ensure that buses equipped with Clear Lanes cameras are assigned to routes using bus lanes. DC will manage how bus stop zones and bus lane corridors and attributes for each are assigned in the system. So for example, hours of operations vary. Some bus lanes are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Some of them are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So we want to make sure that the system has it accurately recorded so you aren't getting tickets at the wrong time at the wrong place. And DC will also be responsible for reviewing evidence packages, issuing tickets, and collecting fines and the fine revenue. At this time, we have selected a Clear Lanes vendor. The 2-year base contract will equip 140 buses with cameras. All 140 cameras will be installed right away and will cover all existing bus lanes in 2023. DDOT is continuing to add bus lanes, so as they add more bus lanes in 2024, we've been working closely with them to make sure that the same 140 cameras cover these bus lanes also. So for example, I think, gosh, I can't see this right now, but one of them is HNI and Benning. So in 2023, we have HNI bus lanes. In 2024, Benning comes on, but the X2 runs on that entire corridor. So that's how we've picked the routes to make sure that we can continue covering the same corridors over the 2 years. Because the program enforces bus stops and bus lanes, so we are the first in the nation to be enforcing bus stops as well. These 140 cameras will improve service for 64% of DC's bus customers, which is also 37% of our region's bus customers. DC has the funding to continue to build bus lanes, and our program can add up to 600 cameras over 10 years to continue to cover these lanes. So far, in January, we've awarded a contract to a vendor. We are doing some pre-work right now, which is why our project manager is not here. He's at CTF right now doing pre-installations. We've finished identifying buses, we've done bus surveys, we are developing prototypes for installation, and we are working on ticket evidence requirements with DC. Once you have approved and authorized the reimbursable project agreement, we will begin installation. This is the part of the schedule that Metro controls. We plan to complete installation and testing in the next 2 to 3 months. DC expects that they will begin issuing warnings sometime this summer. Some of that timeline is dependent on back-end integration between Clear Lanes and their existing enforcement systems. Actual enforcement would begin 45 days after that warning period and is expected sometime in the fall. Right now, we are implementing in DC only, but Maryland is pursuing Clear Lanes legislation as bus lane monitoring legislation as well. Once their proposed legislation becomes law, Clear Lanes could be expanded to our Maryland Metro bus service area as well. We are also partnering with Virginia transit providers to explore legislative options for their next legislative session. So we aren't just going to put these cameras on our buses and walk away. We are going to continue monitoring the performance of our buses. Our goal is very clear. Our goal is to improve service for a large segment of our region's bus customers, many of whom are low income and persons of color, and we want to do this as fast as possible. What we will be watching for are improvements in bus speeds and reliability. That's all from me today. Thank you for the opportunity to present. We are seeking approval for entering into an operating reimbursable project agreement with DDOT so we can improve speeds and reliability for our customers.
All right. Thank you very much. I have a couple questions. I can defer to others first. I'll start over here, Mr. McAndrew. And welcome to the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Great presentation. Thank you. This is excellent, and appreciate the collaboration and partnership with MTA as they look at exploring this both in the Baltimore market, but also in Montgomery and Prince George's County. I'm new. This is my first day. Can you give me a little bit more depth of the kind of cost structure on the capital side? How is this being paid for? And then I don't know if there's any context of the potential revenue, how the district may use potential revenue if there were revenues to be made off this.
Okay, so it's in the capital budget. It's we are paying for the capital cost through the capital budget in the bus priority program. So there's a CIP for it. So that's where the Metro's capital share is coming from. What was the other question? Sorry.
I guess.
Oh, the revenue.
So we're paying, Maryland and Virginia are also paying for these as well at the same time, or?
So there is a regionally funded bus priority program that advances a variety of measures across the region. This is one initiative funded within that program by the region. Also included are things like transit signal priority projects, design of planning and design for tactical bus lanes. There's some active work happening now on Georgia Avenue and Silver Hill Road in Prince George's, Georgia Avenue in Montgomery and Silver Hill Road in Prince George's. So a lot of initiatives happening across the region to try to improve bus speeds and reliability.
Right. Actually, Tom, I thought that the district was paying for the actual cameras. Wasn't that your question, Joe? Well, not if the district is paying for the cameras.
So we are, Metro is paying for the capital costs, which includes the installation, which includes the actual equipment as well as the installation of the equipment, maintenance and warranty. DC is paying annual operating costs, and that includes software fee, annual licensing costs, cellular fee, vendor review of evidence packages, all of that. So the operating cost and licensing.
But I think Deputy Mayor Babers just volunteered to pay for Metro's costs, so.
Well, no. So no, I was actually told in a previous meeting that DDOT was paying for the actual camera equipment. So maybe that wasn't.
Well, it sounds like they're paying for the operating costs associated with it, but not the physical capital costs associated with the camera.
Okay. And right, okay. She heard that too. So, okay, just some misinformation we were given. So just to clarify.
Deputy Mayor Babers, I may be able to clarify that the DDOT is also pursuing a similar program for DC circulator buses, and that may be part of the.
No, that wasn't it, but that's okay. It's clarified. And Joe, just to answer your question in terms of the revenue for these bus cameras was included in the $578 million over DC's 4-year plan of camera revenue, additional camera revenue.
Okay. Other questions? You have something, yes, go ahead.
So first of all, Raka, hello, good to see you, great presentation. I have 2 questions, hopefully I can remember the second one. This, of course, the purpose of this is to speed up the buses. So my question is, you know, the bus schedule, is that based on the current actual bus schedule, which means that WMATA going to have to update the schedule potentially if we get the benefits of the cameras?
Yeah, we work very closely with our bus scheduling folks, and we'll continue to monitor how much faster they're going, and then reduce the time in the schedule for it as required.
Okay, great. And I mainly asked that question because I know any Metro bus riders who are listening will be so excited about the fact that the schedules will still match. You know, they'll get new schedules eventually to let them know the reduced time. My second question is, as you indicated in your presentation, currently the DC dedicated bus lanes are really not all that dedicated because there is parking allowed during certain hours. And I've questioned my team on that because, of course, I'm a bus rider. In one ride, the driver, he tried to stay in that lane, but he had to keep coming out and going back in, coming out and going back in, because parking was being allowed. So does WMATA have any thoughts about whether we should try to do 24/7 for those dedicated bus lanes?
Rock, I'll jump in on this one because I might get right out of the technical to a different topic. So I think the staff would suggest that any of our partners, the district probably being the most important for the bus network, but that certainly doesn't mean Montgomery and Prince George's and all of Northern Virginia aren't incredibly important partners on the network as well. It's just a little bit more congestion in the district itself. I think we would welcome any transit priority improvements that any of our partners would give a good use of the right-of-way for more people on transit, which goes to our equity, our climate, and our economic goals as a region. Quite frankly, most places you do not need dedicated infrastructure at certain points of the day. 10 o'clock at night is not going to really matter all that much because you don't have other congestion. You can build your infrastructure to be a little safer on boarding and lighting and those types of things. But what we would like to see especially is more peak period and maybe areas around special events. And when we do diversions, example, summer shutdowns and other things, we want to work with our partners to get temporary bus lanes as well to make sure our shuttles work better. Lots of cities around the country are doing more of that. So to your broader question, we welcome the partnerships. And if there's anything we can do at the Metro to help accelerate any local jurisdiction giving piece of asphalt for buses over cars, we are all in to help.
Well, so we're gonna take a look at that in the district, because one of the things is, we're not trying to do bus cameras to issue tickets. We would just prefer for residents, visitors to not park in the dedicated bike lane, because vehicles that I'm talking about, they're parked there even when they're not supposed to, because it's parking as far as they're concerned. So hopefully the ticketing helps, but it is not about the ticketing. It is simply about compliance and getting our buses to move quickly and freely throughout the district.
Yeah, and again, from a WMATA staff point of view, this revenue would not come to us, and I think, you've said that, I think the mayor said that. No one, I think, believes that, just like if someone got pulled over on the highway, catching someone on speeding or all these things, the revenue is not the purpose. The purpose is to have deterrent of bad behavior. So and the bus system is a good example. Overwhelmingly lower income individuals use the bus in our region, more individuals of color. We have a strategic plan that talks about all of our values. COG has done that. All the municipalities have done that. The other day we carried almost 370,000 people on the bus system. It's our highest day since COVID. We believe we have capacity to do more as we staff up. In this budget, we have actually a little bit of cushion in the bus operations there. So as we staff up, we want to continue to pick away and add more frequency. The better we can have infrastructure and systems to support bus, we're going to get more people on the system. The more people on the system means it's better for everyone else that's not on the bus as well. So if you're a delivery, first responders getting to emergencies, if you're on bikes, you name it, the more people we get in this region to use the bus system, the better off our region will be. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Let me just ask a couple of questions about that deterrent. So if somebody does get a fine, is there a mechanism? Basically, what happens if they don't pay the fine? I don't know if this is probably not necessarily a Metro question, but maybe a DC question.
So these cameras, of course, are going to be part of DC's automated traffic enforcement system. And what happens 30 days after a ticket is issued, and if the person doesn't pay, the ticket will double. And the person, of course, has the right to adjudicate the ticket, and that's through the Department of Motor Vehicles. And of course, we are ramping up our booting and towing function. And so the primary thing that happens to individuals who do not pay is they can be booted.
Their vehicle can be.
Their vehicle, yeah, not them.
Okay.
Their vehicle can be booted or towed.
I was just helping you out there, making sure. But they don't lose their license?
No, they never have.
Okay.
Oh, you mean suspended?
Suspended.
No. ATE tickets are treated as parking tickets. And so you cannot get your license suspended for parking tickets.
Okay, but you can't get your vehicle booted.
Yes, you can get your vehicle booted for any type of ticket.
Right, okay. And then one of the, not necessarily concerns, but points I wanted to make about this that I had asked about previously, but I just want to do in the open forum is there are instances where because of obnoxious deliveries happening on a road or other things, people do have to go into the bus lane because it's the only thing that they can get through, or if they're turning into a parking garage or something like that. So I just wanted to make sure that in those circumstances, someone's not going to get a ticket.
So technically, the camera will take a photo of the image, but the images, which are not tickets yet, they go to the Department of Transportation's Automated Traffic Enforcement Unit. And there are 2 people who lays eyes upon that moving video. And they make the determination that the person was in the lane and they made the turn. And that's the reason. So that ticket is voided. And they can also see if there is perhaps a funeral or a fire truck or police car.
Something happening out on the road. Will
Exactly.
it take a broad enough picture so you could see if part of the road is blocked?
Right. That has caused them to go into the bus.
And is there an appeals process?
Yeah. Yes. It's the normal.
I'm just asking. I know, but
it's the normal.
Assume everybody knows that.
Yes. It's the normal adjudication process for those individuals who fail to look at the video in most cases to see. Right. Yes, you were parked there or whatever. And they can appeal, but I would encourage people to watch the video before they do, because in many cases, it's obvious.
Okay. Any other members of the committee? Okay, Dr. Lowe?
I just want to thank DDOT and WMATA for getting us to this point. I rode the X2 during rush hour a couple weeks ago, and I have never seen a human being go through something like what that operator, who was a consummate professional and a hero, but what he had to go through to just get the bus to go anywhere was drastic measures had to be taken. So I view this as an extremely proportionate response to what's happening out on the street. I just feel great about this. How will the board and the public learn about performance? You say in the presentation, we're going to see how this goes. Are we going to incorporate this into the quarterly performance reports? Or do we have another set of thoughts about like how we're going to find out how it's going?
Yes, to your question about the quarterly performance reports, that's our intended place for updates. And then we'll, as this rolls out, if there are other opportunities, we'll look at those as well.
Oh my God, I can't.
Tom, I just add in, we did bring to the board, one of the ideas is as we work through our dashboards, you may recall, we're working at route by route or line by line, depending, some people like bus line, some people like bus route, performance. And one of those performance characteristics we want is speed, right? Because speed matters desperately on our bus lines, and the difference between 7 miles an hour and 12 miles an hour might seem small, but it's drastic in bus performance.
It's almost 50%.
Yeah, so we want to be able to not do it just quarterly holistically. We want to do it by route, and then we want to get into corridor management too. So where are we performing on corridor? Because we actually, to your point about schedules, lots of places schedule doesn't matter. We want to actually manage it by headway management because you have enough frequency, so no one really cares about what the schedule is because there's a bus so frequent, and we got to make sure they're spaced out and not bunched and all that kind of thing. So that's what Tom's team is working on, is this really deep dive so everyone can see how their experience on bus is, not just, so we'll have the 20,000 foot, but also the granular experience on bus performance.
Is there any other transit agency in the country that's doing this?
Cat Metro in Austin does a little bit of that kind of stuff, and I think you're seeing Boston, I think, is doing some more, LA. I mean, our whole industry right now is just every month, because all the smart people, all these agencies are talking to each other and then challenge each other, and as one does one, that's a good idea. So, I mean, our industry is moving really rapidly now to use data to drive performance and delivery versus an old utility model. So I would say in some ways we're leading, in some ways we're cutting and pasting and stealing and improving, then reiterating after that.
Fascinating. Per your point about changes to the schedule, those really represent operational savings, right? Like the way that we have to, push extra buses or like allow extra time on runs, those are costs. And if we achieve operational savings through improved reliability, we should document and understand that. Are we going to be able to estimate that?
Yes, that is definitely part of the intent of monitoring the both the performance and the impacts of this. As was discussed earlier, we have a process that we go through to update schedules based on the environment that's out there. And so capturing the efficiency and productivity and trying to quantify that will be part of the effort going forward.
Tom, it's so cool that your team can do that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I see that we can expand to up to 600 cameras as part of the existing agreement. Will the board have to take action in order to see expansion, or is this an operational decision that can be made contingent as we learn about how this is working?
So we have built into the program, assuming that this is successful, further rollout of the cameras both in DC and to Maryland and Virginia to the extent that the legislative process allows for that. In the capital program, of course, this is all subject to availability of money long-term for bus priority programs and the capital program more broadly. So there'll be check-ins on that all along the way, but we do have the contractual mechanisms in place to expand.
Okay, but cost is a factor as well as like actual performance. Okay. And to the general manager's point about using data to manage and drive performance, can we use the camera data to direct towing, right? Which is also kind of related to your point that it's like, this isn't about issuing tickets, it's about getting vehicles out of the lanes.
So yes and no, because it depends. Because if you try to do real time and direct a tow to crisscross the city, that's not efficient or effective because more than likely the vehicle is no longer there. Our boot and towing system relies on, vehicles driving around with what's called LPRS that pings the tag, and it can let them know if that particular vehicle has a ticket. Of course, in this case, there are parking enforcement officers who can issue their own tickets too if a vehicle is parked. They do that now. They can issue a ticket if the vehicle is parked in the bus lane and the sign hours are not appropriate. So we're not going to specifically direct a tow truck there because that's not efficient.
This is not going to work. Okay, that's too bad. Because I mean, what's brilliant about this as a concept is that like, you don't just get a ticket for being in the bus lane no matter what. You get a ticket specifically if you were in a bus lane blocking a bus because it's a camera on a bus that's catching you being in the way of many, many more people who are on the bus. So there's a certain elegance to that that's really appealing. And I wish that we could like then get the vehicle out of the way. But this is still really good. Okay, that's all my questions.
Okay, well, with no further discussion on this item, I will call the roll. Just as a reminder, we're back to only the Finance Committee voting on this one. Oh, actually, first, I need to make a motion to approve this item, so I'll move approval of the item. Second from someone?
Second.
Deputy Mayor Babers. Okay, I am. I thought we had already moved the motion. All right, call the roll.
Chair Letourneau.
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers.
Aye.
Director Klein.
Aye.
Director McAndrew.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the work on this. We look forward to those updates.
Thank you.
Okay. Last item, we're running about 10, 15 minutes behind schedule, so we'll try to catch up a little bit. The joint development project approvals. So there are 7 items coming to us. These are not new to us, but these are formal approvals to allow us to move forward. And this is really exciting stuff. I know it's not as outwardly exciting as some of the things we're talking about, but when we talk about maximizing revenue and addressing housing and all these kinds of issues, what we're doing in this area is really great. So I will turn it over to Liz.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Liz Price, Vice President of Real Estate and Development. Let's see if my clicker's working here. The purpose of this presentation today is to seek board approvals that will help us advance joint development at several stations identified for near-term development in our 10-year strategic plan for joint development. Specifically, we are seeking approval to hold compact public hearings at 6 metro stations and issue joint development solicitations for 7 stations. By way of background, staff have been engaged in planning activities with each of these stations and our local jurisdictions since 2018. In April 2022, Metro published our 10-year strategic plan for joint development that identified goals and strategies to accelerate development on Metro-owned land. Most future joint development sites require reconfiguration of transit facilities in order to create opportunities for future private development. WMATA's compact requires us to seek input from our customers, nearby residents, and businesses, as well as users of the road network about any proposed changes. Upon board approval of the items presented today, staff will proceed over the next year to schedule and conduct the compact public hearings and issue joint development solicitations. Our joint development strategic plan was published exactly a year ago in April 2022 and established a goal of executing 20 joint development agreements in 10 years. The plan identifies a number of strategies to achieve this goal. Right-sizing our transit facilities, as I said, to make space for other development, working with state, local, and federal partners to identify funding needed to address infrastructure and other needs, and increasing the development readiness of our sites. Finally, the plan also prioritized stations for future development, and today we're bringing forward 8 stations that were identified for near-term development. As part of the strategic plan, we evaluated the remaining development potential of Metro's real estate portfolio. We estimate 40 stations could support 31 million square feet of mixed-use development, including up to 26,000 housing units. These projects deliver significant benefits to state and local governments and communities, as well as Metro, and so it is important for us to find ways to accelerate their delivery. We estimate future projects will generate $340 million in net new annual state and local tax revenue. They will also attract investment and opportunities to parts of the region that need it most. 70% of joint developments are in or adjacent to what COG has identified as equity emphasis areas, which have higher percentages of low and moderate income families and racial minorities. And importantly, these future joint developments will generate millions of new riders as well as revenue for Metro. The 8 projects that we are advancing today could generate 4,500 housing units, including more than 800 affordable units and over $800 million in state and local tax revenue over the next 30 years. In the district, projects at Brookland, Congress Heights, Deanwood, and Fort Totten could support up to 1.8 million square feet and 1,800 housing units as part of that, and generate nearly $300 million in net new tax revenue over 30 years. In Maryland, projects at Capitol Heights, Forest Glen, and North Bethesda could generate 4.5 million square feet, more than 2,500 housing units, and nearly $500 million in tax revenue over 30 years. In Virginia, the vacant lot adjacent to Metro's new office building on Mill Road, a few blocks from Eisenhower Metro, could support over 200 housing units and generate $35 million in tax revenue. I will now briefly summarize the preliminary plans for each station, starting with those in the district. The district in 2019 set a goal of creating 36,000 new housing units by 2025, and our planned joint developments will make a meaningful contribution towards this goal. In addition, the district's update to the comprehensive plan in 2021 increased the development potential of many of our sites. At Brookland, the district adopted a small area plan in 2009 that proposed housing development on Metro's property by reconfiguring the bus loop and relocating kiss and ride operations to a smaller on-street facility. We estimate future development could support up to 400 housing units and retail. Staff recommend advancing the project for public comment and issuing a joint development solicitation. At Congress Heights, the district published a master plan for the revitalization of the historic St. Elizabeth's campus in 2012 that supports up to 5 million square feet of mixed-use development adjacent to the station. The plan, funded by the district, includes the extension of 13th Street to create a new vehicular entrance to the campus from Alabama Avenue, which requires relocating Metro's bus loop and kiss and ride. In addition, in 2022, the district submitted an unsolicited proposal to locate a public library at Congress Heights Station through a land swap with WMATA, creating another joint development parcel north of the bus loop that could support up to 350 housing units. Staff recommend advancing the project for public comment and issuing a joint development solicitation. At Deanwood, the Metro Board previously approved the issuance of a joint development solicitation and amendment to the mass transit plan in 2018 to eliminate the 160-space parking lot. The solicitation was put on hold due to the comprehensive plan update, which increased the development potential for the site, which we estimate could support 300 housing units and retail. DC Public Library has also recently expressed interest in leasing space in the future project with funding secured through the district's capital budget. Given the time that has elapsed since the initial public hearing, staff recommends providing another opportunity for public comment and issuing a joint development solicitation. The final site in the district is Fort Totten. The district adopted a small area plan in 2009 that proposed converting the parking lot into a garage and developing housing at the site. We estimate the site could support 750 housing units and retail, as well as expanded facilities for Metro Transit Police. Staff recommend issuing a joint development solicitation. A compact public hearing is not required here because there are no changes to the capacity or access to transit facilities. I will now shift to our Maryland projects. In Prince George's County at Capitol Heights, the Metro Board previously approved an amendment to the mass transit plan in 2017 to eliminate the 372-space parking lot. Our current plan proposes a reconfiguration of the bus loop and kiss and ride as well, which enables a larger two-building mixed-use residential development with up to 500 units. Staff recommends advancing the project for public comment and issuing a joint development solicitation. At Forest Glen, Montgomery County adopted a sector plan in 2019 that proposed housing development by converting the surface parking lot into a garage and reconfiguring the bus loop and kiss and ride. In 2022, the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County submitted an unsolicited proposal to develop over 1,000 units on the site. Staff recommend advancing this project for public comment. And the final Maryland site is North Bethesda. The Metro Board previously approved the execution of a joint development agreement in 2001, leading to the delivery of 4 mixed-use buildings, including over 900 housing units, a new office building, and 63,000 square feet of retail. A 5th building will break ground later this year that will deliver an additional 354 units. The developer's rights for the remaining land expired in 2017. Metro and Montgomery County executed a memorandum of understanding in November 2020 to advance future development on the site, on the balance of the site, as a life science anchored mixed-use development to include the University of Maryland's recently announced Institute for Health Computing. The county has been coordinating with the state of Maryland on funding for required on-site infrastructure and has secured $40 million to date. Montgomery County also adopted a sector plan in 2010 that proposed adding a second Metro Rail station on the north end of the platform to support growth in the area. Staff recommends advancing the project for public comment and issuing a joint development solicitation. And the final site is in Virginia. In Alexandria, Metro is nearing completion of a new office building on Mill Road, a few blocks from the Eisenhower Metro. A portion of the site will be available for development of up to 200 housing units, which is consistent with the small area plan adopted by Alexandria in 2019. Staff recommends issuing a joint development solicitation. A compact public hearing is not required, as there are no changes to transit facilities. In terms of next steps, we expect to schedule compact public hearings starting this summer, and we'll come back to the board to seek approval of staff reports and amendments to the mass transit plan. We also expect to issue joint development solicitations on a rolling basis starting in FY24. Once developers are selected and joint development agreements negotiated that satisfy our joint development criteria, we would come back to the board to request approval to execute those agreements. In conclusion, we recommend that the board authorize staff to hold 6 compact public hearings at Brookland, Deanwood, Congress Heights in DC, Capitol Heights, Forest Glen, and North Bethesda in Maryland, and to issue 7 joint development solicitations at Brookland, Congress Heights, Deanwood, Fort Totten, Capitol Heights, North Bethesda, and Eisenhower. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clark.
Chair, I just want to add one detail before comments on this. Liz, Stephen, and the team are also planning to come back to the board in June so we can have a kind of deeper discussion about real estate, because these are like specific actions, but a real estate and parking discussion. So kind of really make sure everyone understands all elements of those programs and some philosophical approaches that the team has been working through so we could maybe accelerate not just these, but some other opportunities as well. So I just wanted to make, I think some of us have talked about that, but really making sure we put that marker down that in June we want to come and have a really holistic conversation of those 2 topics versus these particular items. I just want to give context to that.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think anything we can do to amplify what we're doing here. I still sometimes hear feedback that Metro needs to do more on joint development. And I think that's an outdated point of view because we've really been doing a lot. And the team that's here now that's really taken this and run with it. And you can see the momentum with all these projects that are moving forward. So this is really good work. So thank you very much. Other questions, comments? I'll go that side first, Dr. Lip. Well, wait, sorry, member of the committee, Ms. Klein.
Thank you. A couple of questions. This is great. I'm so excited to see 7 joint development solicitations. There is so much momentum here, following up on the joint development strategy that was released last year. Okay, last year. Fantastic. I know this sounds, I just said this is great momentum, but my question is, what's the timing for additional ones? Like, is this what we're going to see for 2023, 24, and then it won't be till 25, 26 that we see more, or is it kind of be a rolling basis?
Yeah, great question. Our goal is to move them as quickly as possible. So we are, just as we sort of vetted these to get them to this point, we have about 30 other stations that we're planning and working with jurisdictions on to get them to this stage as well. So as we said in the strategic plan, our goal is to execute 20 joint development agreements in 10 years. So this, if these 8 go forward this year, that's 8, and we need to get to 12 in 10 at minimum in 10 years. So we will be pushing them as soon as they're ready and the market is available for them.
Great, that's terrific. One of the concerns we've heard a lot about, which I also think is outdated, is that WMATA is too inflexible on the parking replacement requirements. I was curious on are there 2 or 1 that don't require public hearings? 2, I think, Fort Totten, and I think there was another one. Was it just 1? I think Fort Totten doesn't require a public hearing.
Yeah, there were 2 that don't require it.
And Eisenhower. Does that mean that if there is no public hearing, it means there's no plan change to capacity? Does that include the parking? Does that mean that whatever is proposed will have to replace 1 for 1?
Yeah, what I would say is it's a great point, and we try to reinforce, because I think it is sort of a legacy question or concern from some, that we have some requirement to replace parking 1 for 1. We do not. And we have, in many of our current projects and in the projects you see before you today, reduced parking, and in many cases eliminated parking. So this board previously, actually several years ago even, approved the elimination of parking at both Capitol Heights and Deanwood, in part due to low activity there and also a lot of capacity at stations just beyond there. So in some cases we're eliminating that, and without that we wouldn't have the opportunity for development. So that's really key. In some cases, at Fort Totten example was one of our highest utilized garages pre-COVID, and even post-COVID is one of the highest to return. So that's one, as well as Forest Glen. Forest Glen is in a similar position. So those are ones that we haven't proposed to reduce capacity, but I think we're in a very flexible and changing time. And as we evaluate how ridership returns and also parking patterns return, we can still adjust those if we feel it's necessary.
That's great. That's really helpful to hear you say that publicly. And again, it sort of bears repeating every time you come.
We will add that to our regular talking points.
Exactly. Thank you.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'll just be very brief and just say thank you. This is great work. The Governor Moore has made this a big priority for us, and Secretary Wiedefeld is holding a high bar for us to learn and leverage the good work, working with our partners in the counties, with WMATA in this area, but also thinking about what we can do along the Penn line and the stations and the partnerships that we have there, as well as the unrealized opportunity that we have in Baltimore as well. So thank you, and look forward to partnering and learning.
Thank you.
All right. No other members of the committee. I'll go to non-members of the committee. Dr. Lowe.
Yeah, I'll just pile on to what everyone else is saying, which is that it is incredible to see WMATA opening the spigot on joint development, which is something that, we've known has needed to happen for a long time, that the strategic plan was the beginning of, and now we're starting to see the action. The amount of work that is implied in what you are bringing forward today is so impressive. Kudos to the team. I feel very heard in terms of what I've been asking for and wanting to see. Liz, I salute your leadership. I salute the team. This is so responsive to public comment. I mean, Dean Wood's been asking for this. Now we're delivering it. The north entrance at North Bethesda, that's going to be a game changer. This is phenomenal stuff, and I am really, really excited. The potential to generate $340 million in new annual local and state taxes is incredible. WMATA is not just asking for revenue, we're also creating new revenue, and that is so powerful. When you make these local and state tax estimates, are you referring just to property taxes?
No, there is a preliminary estimate of sales, income, and other taxes as part of that.
Fantastic. That's great. I love that that's comprehensive. I'm just so excited. Congratulations. Let's keep at it.
Thank you. I do want to just say that there's been a lot of work, and Stephen and his team have been leading a lot of that, and also in very close coordination with all the jurisdictions. All of these plans are very tightly connected to what the jurisdictions are proposing and their visions as well. So thanks to all of our jurisdictional partners.
All right, since we're all in violent agreement, I will move. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Actually, Liz, I had one question about the Eisenhower project. I remember 3.5 years ago now, maybe, there was the announcement by Amazon that with the city that they were going to actually already decided to build a building there. Is that not part of this
Amazon
anymore?
on our property? Did I understand?
Yeah.
That's not what I'm familiar
Steve,
with.
wasn't there the announcement that day?
When the partnership with Amazon was announced, we did do it at the new Mill Road office building when it was under construction.
Yeah.
And they noted that they were going to be evaluating the Mill Road site, but we need to get that developer on board first.
Okay, got it. And Liz, you weren't here last time. We were talking about this, and I think it's great. We're going to have this discussion in June. I mean, I think this is really important, as other people have said, and so people aren't saying, Metro isn't a good partner. I mean, this clearly illustrates, we're trying to be that good partner. And really, for us, using our assets to their highest value. I think that's really important here. These aren't just real estate transactions. These are asset allocation decisions and things that are going to move the organization forward. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will move approval of the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein. Will you call the roll, Ms. Ellison?
Chair Letourneau?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. McAndrew?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting of the Finance Committee, and I will turn the floor over to Mr. Drummer to begin the Safety and Operations Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Safety and Operations Committee. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. Are there any objections to the agenda by members of the committee? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now to approval of our minutes from our March 23rd meeting. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. So this morning, we have one, I say this morning, what time is it now? Oh, okay, good. So we have one information update on today's agenda, namely Better Bus Network Redesign Project, as we move into the second phase of public outreach. Without further ado, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Webster.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to just turn it right over to the team, Allison Davis and Peter Cafiero from our planning team to jump into the presentation. Excited to be here again this morning with this update.
Good morning. We are thrilled on behalf of the Better Bus Network Redesign team. Peter and I are thrilled to be up here representing a huge milestone. On Monday, we'll be going out to take the draft visionary network out to the public. We've got 50 events over 50 days it's not 50 event, it's not an event every day, but it's 50 events over 50 days, as well as a lot of virtual ways for people to participate to really engage customers, potential customers, other audiences on that visionary network. So again, the visionary network is for Metrobus, Q for the city of Fairfax, and the bus for Prince George's County. So we worked in partnership with all of our other jurisdictional partners, building on a lot of the work of the transit strategic plans that many of our colleagues in Virginia have been doing over the years, as well as moving forward the bus transformation, the board adopted transit equity framework that was adopted in 2020. So there has been a lot of work behind the scenes getting us to this point. So just want to give a high five for that. So again, we'll be providing that update, and then that is the highlights of that visionary network, and then all of the outreach. So one of the things we know, customers really want fast, frequent, reliable, convenient transit when they want to travel and where they want to go. And the region needs that for air quality, for getting people out of their cars, for really providing that access to opportunity. And we know that transit can be taking a bigger role in that. We know from data around all the travel in the region that transit overall is really only capturing about 10% of trips that are viable, that could be made on transit. So there's a ton of opportunity. And that gives us a lot of running room on that. We'll say that there's a lot of data that underpins that visionary network. So 3 kind of main things. Last fall, we were out in the public, got a lot of input about priorities, things we could be doing better, things that are really working. And I think one of the key pieces is that we heard about 45% of respondents to the survey indicated that bus is either very good or excellent. So it's essentially telling us that we don't have to throw everything out and design new. There are lots of things that we do well, different times of day, different routes, that sort of thing. Another one is our existing service and performance. Where are places that we know, again, work well, places that we've kind of known weren't quite right, and this is that opportunity to make those work better. And then finally, those regional travel patterns. Where are there adjacent neighborhoods that people, for whatever reason, transit isn't serving, but there are adjacent neighborhoods and transit can serve those trips. And so looking for those opportunities, it gives us that better understanding. So our network, kind of in summary, there are about 6 key things, probably 10, but we narrowed it down to 6. So the real main focus is on frequent service that runs all day and all week. So that's 7 days a week, not necessarily 24 hours for every route, but that has a really sizable, consistent service pattern all day, all week. We've set a minimum frequency of 30 minutes. So that's not saying that everything is 30 minutes, but that if we're going to run it, it will run at least 30 minutes or better. We did also in this visionary network put forth a 24-hour bus network because we know how important it is for late night or early, whichever way you want to look at it, workers and people who are taking in the nightlife. So having those connections is really valuable. We wanted to make sure that we're connecting to transit hubs, we're connecting to Metro Rail, we're connecting to hospitals, grocery stores, retail, and really making sure that those connections, we're not dropping people off like half a mile from where there's a grocery store, actually bringing them to where they need to go. And that really gets to that direct connectivity. We are at the mercy of the street network. There are places that are we don't have that nifty grid system that Peter used to have in New York. We are at places we do, other places we don't. So we are at that mercy, but we can make connections more directly. And then finally, our jurisdictional partners, as Raka and Tom were talking about, there's a lot of investment in bus priority, and we want to maximize that. So where can we better utilize what's out there now? So I'll just point us to the timeline. Right now, we are about halfway through the entire network redesign. And while this time we are focusing on the visionary, we do intend to come down to something that is more implementable in the near term. The visionary network is structured to be visionary but achievable, and similarly following essentially what our Virginia colleagues do, and some in Maryland as well, really setting out that North Star. Where do we want to go? What's the type of service and network we need? And then how do we set ourselves up for a more near-term implementation? So I'm going to turn it over to Peter to talk about some of those highlights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. I'm Peter Cafuro, Managing Director of Service Planning and Schedules at WMATA. So some highlights of what we will debut to the public early next week in our new proposals for a visionary network concept. Allison mentioned a number of these in her highlights: regional connectivity, matching where people really need to get to, customer experience overall. I would point out there's a lot of connection to the previous presentation you heard about bus cameras and priority. We work very closely to try to just have the overall experience improved, and equity focus in everything that we're doing in this study. So looking at where we can improve access to the people who need it, particularly throughout the region. If we did all of this, we estimate that we could increase bus ridership by close to 50,000 people a day, almost 15 million more a year, which would improve, of course, air quality and the environment and traffic for everybody. And while it would attract riders to bus, it would improve the quality for those already on the bus. Allison covered a number of these items before, so I won't spend a lot of time on this again. Looking at 7-day-a-week, all-day service, frequent. We did invest, as many of you know, in September of 21, as we restored service post-COVID, we invested particularly in bringing back more frequent service on key routes, middays and weekends, and that's been some of our most successful additions to date in service, and in many of those routes are now carrying more than they did pre-COVID. We also are looking to improve connections, anticipating rail lines. So we are, and two rail lines. So this is not just a bus study, it is a transit study as a whole to make the transit system work better. So we have planned around the Purple Line, which we know is coming, both to feed that line, to essentially virtually extend that line with buses further in a belt around the region, and also feeding into it, feeding into our existing rail lines as well. Connected to transit hubs around the region, not just at metro rail stations, but also places like Seven Corners in Virginia, and new hospital that's going to be built at the Landmark Mall in Virginia. More connections to National Harbor in Maryland. So places that are natural existing or potential hubs of transit and buses, as well as destinations for people to go to. And we mentioned the nearby neighborhoods. We have Fort Lincoln to Deanwood, two parts of the district that are walled off from each other by rail yards and highways, and right now not accessible by bus, but our data shows us that a lot of people are traveling between those neighborhoods. In Northwest DC, Maryland, we have a lot of buses that end at the state line. So Chevy Chase DC, Chevy Chase Maryland, same name. No bus service actually goes through to connect those. Ward 6 and 7, there's a lot of, and Ward 7 and 8, there are barriers. So we've looked at all of those. And in Prince George's County, working with the bus, there are a lot of places where it's a tangled mess of confusing routes, and one street may have different operators on different portions, and we've looked working with them to jointly straighten some of that out and make it easier for our riders and customers mutually to get where they're going. An example of some of the frequency improvements that we're included in this concept network. This map shows the eastern part of the district into Prince George's County. To orient you to the color coding, red are our most frequent routes. This is existing, so red routes are operating every 12 minutes or better. The dark blue is every 20 minutes or better. Goes down to some black lines there that are represent routes that are less than 30 minutes, which we even in the district have routes that operate that frequency. With our proposed network, you see a lot more red, so a lot more high-frequency routes in this part of the region, including into Prince George's, which really needs that service. And as Allison mentioned, there are no routes in the proposed network that are more than 30 minutes. Oops, sorry about that. So here's another example. This is the route currently known as the B2 that goes from Anacostia Station in the south up to just across the state line into Mount Rainier, Maryland. One of the things we try to do with this redesign is, where possible, have anchors to the route on either end. So try to both provide more access, but also more efficient and effective use of a bus route by having people traveling in both directions at the same time. So our proposal here is to extend it up to the West Hyattsville Metro Station. So you have an anchor on both ends, as well as on that section between Mount Rainier and West Hyattsville was one that we identified could use more frequent service and more 7-day-a-week service than it currently has. Allison mentioned the overnight network, which would provide access across the region to over 1 million residents to have 24-hour service. And there are several 100,000 residents in this proposal who would gain weekend service where they have none at all. So it's not just about adding frequency on weekends, which is important, but in some cases, there is no weekend service on routes throughout our region. Another example that was mentioned before is access to grocery stores, and this example on this slide shows a number of changes that we made to try to improve service. So currently the A6, 7, and 8 do a loop in southwest district of Columbia. It's a bit confusing because the route has different names depending on which direction in the loop you're going. And it only has the anchor at the north at Anacostia. At the south, it ends at Southern Avenue because that's the state line. No other real reason for that. Historically, that's where it ended. About a half mile away from the last stop is a major shopping center, Eastover in Maryland, has a giant supermarket that's not just obviously a shopping destination, but also an employment opportunity. So we looked to improve all of that by cutting that loop and creating 3 routes, 2 of which would go into the shopping center and end at the grocery store, and the third one would continue down to National Harbor, another major employment, retail, entertainment center that we felt needed more access than it currently has. We also in this looked at schools, at jobs overall, hospitals, so we wanted to make sure that we had the maximum connection to key areas, destinations that people need to travel to. Another aspect we looked at was directness and speed of the trip, where we could improve it. Sometimes there are trade-offs in that because going more directly may mean you don't deviate off the route to go somewhere. So it is a bit of a trade-off. This map shows the current bus route 10B in Virginia. At the north end, it starts at Ballston Metro Rail Station, ends up in Alexandria on the south end, but you see the spaghetti in the middle where it's looping around a few times. That's to get access to the Shirlington Transit Center, a major transit hub with lots of transfers, and there's certainly valid reasons for the bus to go there. But we noted in this case that there are many other routes that go into Shirlington for people going to Shirlington, and there are many other opportunities on this route to transfer to other bus routes. So by straightening out the route, we save customers 15 minutes going from north of that point to south of that point, which is significant. We also propose to route it a bit to the right on the map in Alexandria on the Metroway to make better use of that major infrastructure that's in place and provide better access to the developments and jobs in that area. And we also, overall, so this is an example really of how we save time in some of these changes, more trips that are 30 minutes or less, and more trips that, 20% more trips regionally that we feel would be more competitive to other modes of transit and attract riders. As I believe Allison mentioned, and I think I mentioned before too, bus priority is really important. If the buses are stuck in traffic, none of this is going to mean much to people. We have a lot of investment in the region. Again, you heard about that earlier today. In bus lanes, traffic signal priority, enforcement of those bus lanes. And so our goal was to make maximum use of that in more times of the day. So not just rush hours, but throughout the day and on weekends to take advantage of that infrastructure where it made sense to do so. So significant increase in service in those corridors. And lastly, before I turn it over to back to Allison to talk about how we're going to engage the public in this, just a couple of more points. As was mentioned, this is an increase. This is looking at what we think the needs are. So it is an increase in resources of up to 35% of what we currently operate regionally, so not just Metrobus. So it's something we would be building to even in the best of situations. So the next phases of the study will look at how we do that. We started from the perspective of looking at where the customers need to go. So it right now doesn't specify what operator of all the regional operators would run what. That'll be an upcoming phase of this study. And we are also looking at how we number the bus routes. Metrobus inherited a historical mix of different ways of numbering routes. We have an 8Y and a Y8 and an 80, depending on where you are. And so we are going to look at that in the future. Right now, we are using a temporary system of a 3-digit number and a DC, MD, or VA to identify the routes so we get public comment on the new routes compared to this mix of existing names. Now I'll turn it back to Allison to talk about engagement.
All right, thanks, Peter. And I did notice there are a couple of formatting things. So on the website, on the board, in the board mail out, they are formatted correctly. So just putting that out there. So as I said, as we all know, Metrobus's 50th birthday or 50th anniversary was earlier this year. So in honor of that, we are hosting 50 events over 50 days to celebrate Metrobus. And so we'll be out in the community and we have our launch party next Friday. So from 3 to 7 at the Arc, and I hope many of you and your constituents can join us. But we're looking for ways to take that launch party. We'll have workshops across the region and then doing some pop-ups at transit centers and farmers market and the like, but essentially a way to really engage people where they are and make sure that they're understanding and they're hearing about this, because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of times it just kind of passes people by. So we want to make sure that we're hearing from especially people who are bus customers and potential bus customers. We'll also be doing some lunch and learns and then advancing some of the bus stop chats that we did back in the fall that were fairly successful. We're upping our game and we're doing some bus ride-alongs to really talk to people who are on the bus, talk to them, and we'll be focusing this where a lot of the changes are proposed to really get feedback there. And then we'll be doing an Ask Me Anything on Twitter. So where we'll be...
That's also an AMA, just in case some board members were wondering. I found out this week, so just thought I'd add a little humor to that. So thanks.
Thanks, Randy. So we will be out, and I will say that this is, we posted this as of the 6th, but weather impacts, when we're going to be outside. So we will have, this will always be updated on wmata.com/betterbus. But again, we'll be out at transit hubs, metro stations, community centers, really trying to talk to people and get their feedback on trade-offs and some of the route proposals. We're not only going to be out and about, we will also have a really structured virtual experience because we recognize that most people want to do this from the confines of their own home or maybe their commute going home when they've heard about it. So we have an online trip planner, just like Google. You type in your, start and end. You get to see your current trip and then what the new trip would be. And then there's also a way to understand how much more you can access and where else in the region you can get to with the Visionary Network. You'll also be able to just comment on the route, right? Drop in a pin and comment. Obviously, for those of us who love to look at a map, there is a map library that you can really zoom in, but we recognize that most people aren't transit nerds and they really just want to talk about their own routes. And then finally, we will have a survey to really get feedback in a structured way. So we took your comments and others, really wanted us to make sure we're engaging youth. They are riding our system. They are the future of the region. So we've had focus groups with mainly focused on high school students in the district, but we've structured that and we've worked with our MTPD colleagues as well to get that up and going. We've had multiple workshops with jurisdictional staff, and we really appreciate how much and how well they've been involved in giving us feedback and really owning this as much as we are. And then we're continuing to engage elected officials and working with community-based organizations. And we're having some CBO-focused events that are not necessarily, they're publicized to those communities. And so really trying to partner there as well. Finally, we also took all of this out on the road and went to all of our bus divisions, and then we also went to Q's bus division and the bus's bus division to really have preview parties, right? Our bus operators know their routes and all the streets, and they can tell us, like, that street's not gonna work for a 40-foot bus, and that turn is problematic, and all of that. So we had worked with them throughout this process, and we wanted to go back out to them before we launched, so we just finished those up last week. But we've had a great return, and I appreciate our colleague Leroy Jones, Jewel Bell, and their team for making this happen. And then so finally, and then we'll stop talking and take your questions, but next steps, we're launching the Visionary Network on Monday, and then we'll take all that we're hearing over the next 50 days and take that in to revise the Visionary Network and then allow us to move forward on something that's more near term. Thank you, and look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you all very much for an excellent presentation. I just have to tell you, this is a Herculean project. And Peter, you and Allison remind me of the duck in the water. On top, cool, calm, collected. Under, pedaling 100 miles an hour. There's a lot of complex moving parts in this project. And I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing there. What excites me about this project is better bus equals better regional transit. And I'm hoping in the future, as we continue to develop and grow and get feedback, that we connect what we're doing in Better Bus to what's happening in Metro Rail as well, just to be sure that everyone understands better bus equals better regional transit. And then the second part of this is I'll say that your approach is quite refreshing, especially the outreach in 3 phases. You're very proactive, and I love a term that Mr. Smedberg introduced, use of assets at their highest value. I call it optimization, being efficient, but I love that term, use of assets at their highest value to meet our strategic goals in our strategic plan. So thank you for that. But I do want to say that there are 2 schools of thought out there, and we hear and we listen, and one school of thought is it's too big, it's too complex, it's too costly, and nothing's going to come of this. I would beg to differ. And I would say your approach is, hey, let's define our ideal future and let's eat that elephant one feasible bite at a time that we can afford. What a great way to do business. We're not stuck in the mud on staying where we've been for the past 25 years, and we're moving forward. So thank you. Don't be deterred. Press forward, and and I look forward to seeing where we go with this. I'll open the floor to committee members. Ms. Martin Proctor.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this presentation. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this. You know, as Chairman Drummer said, this is a Herculean effort trying to coordinate and reimagine what this bus network is going to look like for DC. I do have one topic that I want to have addressed. I know that we talked about it previously in our pre-meeting. On your slide, it speaks specifically to the fact that they are now connecting more to 14 more K through 12 schools. I think this is a great anchor. This is a great connection point. And I want to make sure that we are addressing the fact that these 14 schools will be diversely dispersed amongst DC and not just uptown. So I'm hoping that we can address that.
Right, and this, just to clarify, this is saying that the average resident in equity-focused community would gain 14 more schools than they currently have. Almost everyone currently has access to schools on the bus network because there's a lot of schools out there. But this gives an additional 14 more within a 60-minute transit ride. So it is broadly increasing access to schools throughout the district.
Okay, and there'll be a way for us to kind of verify what wards this new access points will be.
Well, it's the equity-focused communities.
Well, it's the equity-focused communities, but is there a way to drill down to make sure that they're all not just in Ward 8 or Ward 7 or Ward 4 is kind of what I'm looking at here.
Most of them are.
And yet some of them aren't. So is there a possibility for us to kind of get that additional information?
So that's sort of two ends of the trip, right? So we're talking about where people live in the equity-focused communities and then what schools they can access to in the statistic, right? So the equity-focused communities are
we have a lottery system
where they are. The schools are throughout the district, and we to be honest, we looked at schools everywhere in the district. You know, how we could better, and we know the school service we currently run and how we could better incorporate that into regular full route service to give more access throughout the day. But we particularly paid attention in those equity communities. This was a statistic we pulled out, but if there's particular areas that you want to see, I mean, it might be better to do an example to say, at this point here, you can get to these schools, but with the new network, we can get to these additional schools. I mean, maybe that would be better than to try to, because globally it's going to depend where you live.
I think that might be a better way to try and best explain, not just to myself, but to the broader public. And as I said, I think this is a great opportunity as we reimagine our bus network. And thank you so much for this effort. And I'm going to keep following up on this school because I think it's an amazing connector and a great anchor. And if we can get my kids to school, then everything else will follow suit. Thank you.
Dr. Lowe?
Chair Drummer, I totally agree with your point about the need for a visionary network so that we can think long-term and eat elephants. But in the context of implementation in 2024, we also have to be realistic about the FY 2024 budget, right? The kind of our near-term budget constraints. And so I think there's a huge challenge here in starting from a visionary network that is not in the FY 24 budget and a network that we can immediately move to implementation and start realizing some benefits of a bus network redesign within our existing fiscal constraints. So we need both of these things, and I think this is the right way to go about this. But can you say more about what process is going to get us to who is getting a better bus network in 2024 right away? How are we going to make these decisions?
Well, I think we'll both jump in here, but I'll start. This will be another interesting, intense phase of the study. So to some extent, we can't answer that question yet because we're just beginning it. We know it's going to be difficult. It's much easier when you are looking at what the needs are and how we could best serve it. And I'm not saying we didn't have some fiscal constraints on what we came up with, but we certainly tried to be visionary and look at what the needs were. But moving forward, we will, our intent is to use this visionary network and the comments we're going to receive in the next month or two, because we're going to get, some things we missed or some things that people really don't like at all, or the changes they want to make. So we'll look at that first, and then we will look for a first cut at a network that is more in line with their current resources, that will incorporate as much as we can of that. It will vary throughout the region. In Montgomery County in particular, it's going to be in conjunction with their network redesign that's happening, so there'll be the exchange there. And in Prince George's, it'll be in conjunction with them, because it's going to be a very integrated, hopefully, network between the two agencies there. So those are sort of places that we would start. I mean, as some of the examples, I think the example that's on the screen right now, cutting those loops and getting into the shopping center, I think is something that probably is more achievable in the shorter term. Straightening out that route in Virginia instead of going through the spaghetti, that is something that is more achievable. So, but I don't want to prejudge anything yet until we really dive into it. But my point is that there are things that we can do now, even with constrained resources.
And I'll just add that part of what we're asking the public for are a lot of these trade-offs, right? Like, we are definitely putting a lot of resources, like, air quote the resources, but in frequency all day, all week, 7 days a week, 6 a.m., 9 p.m. We've got a 24-hour network in there. So, like, having them prioritize, getting that feedback, whether the frequency should really be focused more midday versus late night versus Saturday, Sunday, how do we then take that information, and it helps us maybe scale back slightly and whether the question is, the coverage, are people willing to walk further for more frequent service, or do they really want that service at their front door, which is therefore likely to be less frequent? So it's really those trade-offs. That's part of the survey that we're launching on Monday to get that information.
I see, because we can redesign the map, like the lines on the map, but then a huge piece of the cost is like, am I coloring it in red or am I coloring it in blue? Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, I'm really interested to see how this develops. Keep us posted.
Okay, we will.
If I just add one comment to that, because I think this is super important, and that's why the team, different part of Tom's team, will be coming to talk about the Roslyn to Stadium Armory kind of connection issue that we have. Everyone on the board's aware, the public, this has been a topic around here for a long time. We can't run any more trains after a certain capacity between Roslyn and Stadium Armory. And it's not just Roslyn, it's the whole, we basically need an east-west relief line long-term for our rail network. This is, you put these two together, and what we're trying to show is, yes, we have a serious financial crisis that will be hitting us in FY25 that, as a team, we're going to have to go work with our partners and resolve. But part of this is helping the community and the region at large see the difference between a region kind of, in decline with no metro, one that is status quo, i.e. we're not going to fix the longer significant regional issues and really grow as a region. And the third is this vision. And both, whether it's rail or bus, they're all scalable. So the idea we go 25% more bus tomorrow is not realistic for us to implement anyway, right? We're still hiring and moving back to regular service. So parts of this could be 10% if us as a region invest correctly, and I think Board Member Drummer focused really well. The more people on the bus system, the better the region mobility. But we could have 10% for the first 5 years, and then we grow from there, we grow from there, we grow from there. What the next process they are doing is they're kind of ranking through community input what are the most important levers to now push: frequency, service, hours, days a week, things of that nature. So what we want to do in this period of time is, after get this budget passed here, and then really start framing out what the future of this organization is going to be. And I think I think the timing is working out really well for the bus piece, eventually the rail piece, the real estate piece. All this comes together and that'll help get the community conversation and really then the region saying, what do we want Metro to be?
That's a great point. If you don't frame it now, when the time comes, you're not ready. So at least you're ready with information and you know where you stand. Ms. Klein?
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered, but I guess this is almost more of a comment. As I'm trying to track what's happening, which is a fantastic process, really impressive work in the amount of time that you've had. I think I'm sure you're already thinking about this, but I'm struggling with a little bit of how to communicate because there's a lot of public comment that's happening, which is great because we want to hear from folks and incorporate that feedback in. But we've just had budget public hearings, which had some proposals specific to bus routes. Now we're going to have this, which has some specific bus routes on a map. I think we're going to need to make sure that folks understand the difference between the bus service changes that are happening as part of the budget we just adopted and these proposals, this is not happening July 1st, and also distinguishing this from what they went through when the Better Bus comment or the Better Bus project launched, which also incorporated a public comment, but I assume also took some of that information about, do you want frequency, do you want affordability, or what do you want in your network? And then some folks are going to have public hearings around their particular rail stations as part of the joint development we just talked about. There's so much opportunity for public feedback that I think it also raises the possibility for some confusion about which thing is which thing and what's happening now and what's happening later. So I guess this is more of just a comment to make sure that we're always very clear about this map is proposed, this map is starting on July 1st, those kinds of things.
Could not agree more. And in fact, we actually had a debate over, do we use proposed? But proposed is something we talk about when we talk about the budget. And so it's like draft. How do we get draft? Like the word draft as for the visionary network, because we can't be clear, like we want to hear from people about this, right? There's always, I think, an assumption that when something goes out, it's already baked and like, you know, what's my comment gonna do? But this is like a great opportunity to get the word out that we do want to hear from people, like about the entire thing. We've taken what I think is a really strong first pass at it as to where we think the direction needs to be. But, you know, we are open for comment on this for sure.
Okay, so Tom, Allison, Peter, thank you very much for a great presentation. And with no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned. I'll turn the floor over to Chair Smedberg to reconvene the special board of directors meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Drummer. I'd like to reconvene the special board meeting. Now we have two business items on today's agenda: report by the Finance and Capital Committee related to fiscal year 24 budget, and one consent item related to Potomac Yard. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Letourneau for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, there were three items referred to the board at this morning's Finance Capital Committee. At the special board meeting, we'll just be acting on the FY24 budget adoption, and the other items will be on the agenda for our board meeting on April 27th. So with that, we have item A, acceptance of public input report, and Title VI analysis and adoption of the FY 2024 operating capital budgets in the FY 24 to 29 capital improvement program. Staff has sought the board's acceptance of the public input record and the Title VI analysis of the proposed fare and service changes and adoption of the FY24 operating and capital budgets in the FY24 to 29 capital improvement program. There are 4 changes to fares and service from the original proposal put forward in December. The max rail fare remaining at $6, Metro access fare being capped at $4, Route 11Y between Mount Vernon and downtown DC will be reinstated in July, and late night frequencies on the green and yellow lines will improve to every 7.5 minutes in addition to all-day headway of 6 minutes. In addition, an amendment was offered and accepted to waive the fee for senior Smart Trip cards pending approval of Title VI equity analysis. I will note that there are some slight changes to the subsidy table as a result of the changes that I just outlined that have occurred since December, and those have been discussed with jurisdictional staff so that they're aware. Again, I'd like to thank the board, the staff, our congressional delegation, general manager, and all the team for all the work on this budget. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Great. Thank you. We have a motion on the table by Mr. Letourneau. I hear a second by Dr. Lowe. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask the Board Corporate Secretary to administer the vote.
Chair Smedberg? Aye. Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Vice Chair Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau?
Aye.
Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. McAndrew?
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Matt's earlier sentiments and thank our board colleagues and staff for the tremendous work that went into this budget. This budget represents Metro's continued commitment to provide safe, reliable, affordable, sustainable service by creating a more simplified and equitable fare system, optimizing the frequency of Metrobus and Metro Rail services, and increasing public safety throughout the transit system. I also want to highlight how transparent this process has been and how forward-thinking the fiscal year 24 budget is. Due in part to the pandemic, we had to rethink and reorient our business model to enhance the customer experience and to remain sustainable. Today is the culmination of that work, now framed Your Metro, our strategic transformation plan. While the budget represents a big leap forward, Metro will continue looking for additional ways to be responsive to our customers and the region's needs as the DMV continues to grow and evolve. I'll turn it over to Mr. Clark now for a few remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, I want to thank the board for just, I think it's just been an incredibly collaborative process. We started this in September. Appreciate the language used, Mr. Chair, about transparency. I'm really proud of the effort. We've done that very publicly. Really tried to work through various proposals and then get a consensus, which sometimes is challenged, of course, the type of region we have and the organization we have. So deep appreciation to the board and the collaboration. I want to thank the staff. Mostly, obviously, the main leads are obviously Yutendi, Tom, and Christy on this effort. This is Yutendi's first budget as our CFO. And I'm sure that Dennis will be texting her, telling her congratulations as well. But it's also, I think, really important to recognize there is just an enormous amount of staff across the organization that puts this together. So that while they are doing phone calls with you all and they're doing public meetings and they're doing all of this work, there's dozens of people, and they're not just in their parts of the organization. Every part of the organization has budget analysts and people that work through this process. I want to thank all of them. They put a lot of work into this, and kudos. I also want to thank, I know some of our JCC partners and a lot of our other colleagues and stakeholders around the region. They all got asked, and we listened, and we were part of that process. And I made the commitment when I got here, I'm all into partnerships. I know we're talking about real estate that way, our bus network redesign. Any way we can all work together and make one better region is what Metro's goal to be. And then lastly, I'm really proud of the investments that we're making in this budget. You know, budgets speak to values. And you mentioned, Mr. Chair, our strategic transformation plan that the board not too long ago passed. In there, it highlights words like safety as a core value. It highlights words like equity as a core value and innovation as a core value. And that's what we are doing. We're bringing forth a completely different way to think about caps for people that need it the most on Metro access, or an floor amendment that Board Member Drummer made on seniors, and thinking about how to get people on the system as seamlessly and easy as possible. Yes, there is a change on the rail network, but I think it's through an incredible lens of equity where we're going to double the Green Line trains to the Branch Ave side, and people that are the most transit dependent in our region are going to get so much more service. And we're going to continue to watch that and see how we can advance our network that way. So I'm just really proud of the team for kind of leaning in on the values that this organization and you all passed, and trying to make that happen. And then the commitment to the community is we're going to watch this, we're going to continue to learn from this, and as the comment of Board Member Lowe, we will manage this budget fiscally. You know, we're all taxpayers too. You have our commitment that we're going to manage this budget tightly and do everything we can to actually bring it in and even have available funding to do even more. So that is our commitment. So thanks again, and onward we go to the next conversation.
And I also would, I think it would be remiss if not to say our new GM really pushing the discussion and making us think about things, you know, a little differently. So thank you, Randy, for your leadership on this effort as well. And finally, we have one item before the board, a consent item today. I would like to move the following. Approval of a resolution to authorize the general manager to determine a revenue service date for Potomac Yard Station, subject to WMATA not having received notification that the Washington metropolitan area Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission or the Federal Transit Administration has not identified any hazardous conditions as part of the pre-revenue service. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Lowe. Board Corporate Secretary, please administer the vote.
Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Vice Chair Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau?
Aye.
Mr. Lowe? Aye. Mr. McAndrew?
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. With no further business to come before the board, we will stand.